Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be checking out Superman Lost issue 10 by Christopher Priest, Carlo Pagulayan and Jose Luis. Priest brings his miniseries to the perfect ending, which on paper should be really kind of impossible, being everything Priest has to tie together and round off, but by God he manages to do it. At the end of the last issue, Hope, the Green Lantern Clark met on Kansas, arrived on Earth and was pregnant, leading to some real personal drama between Clark and Lois, who of course is thrown off balance by the huge revelation. Clark, however, is whisked away by a conflict between two nations on Earth, and utilizing some of the experience he had in the 20 years on Kansas dealing with the Republic and the Alkazians, he gets involved in the war and puts an end to it for a change. Priest really went for it with this sequence, letting Superman do what I'm sure a lot of people want him to do, which is to get involved in conflicts in like world wars and to stop them in their tracks. But at the same time, Priest also stays within Superman's character. He doesn't outrightly force these people involved to stop the conflict. He stops the conflict that's happening right then and there, and then he gives them a choice, imploring them to let go of all of their past quarrels that maybe they aren't even a part of anymore, and it was something that their families generations ago started, and they're so far removed from it that they don't even know what they are fighting over, and he implores them to drop that and look to the future, and have hope that things will change. Priest also ties this into Lois's story about the senator she's been investigating throughout this entire series, and the little bits we've been drip fed over the course of this series reveals that he was trying to put a foreign aid bill into the Senate, but all of this stuff happened where he was framed for embezzling a bunch of money because he slept with his rival's assistant, and that just kind of threw his bill out the window, and because that bill was thrown out the window is what resulted in this conflict. And I like that Priest, he didn't have to tie that story back in, because not all stories in a story arc of a comic need to be tied together, and I like that he just went that little bit extra mile to like just sort of lightly tie it together, and it wasn't something big or anything, it was just all background stuff. And I like that that was Lois's story for most of the event, her kind of helping this senator clear his name of any public wrongdoing. Lex also makes a return this issue and is probably the one thing I didn't particularly like about the book. His part is we see him monologuing to Superman over a page about the hero's return to normal, but Superman merely says that Lois got one over on Lex and he should be careful, since if Superman decides to focus his time and effort onto Lex, then that won't be a good thing for him. The way the scene just sort of ends is what really did it for me, since it just smash cuts to a totally different part of the book and part of the sequence, and we didn't really get that satisfying ending to Lex's story with him realizing that he's been beaten by these two people and can't really understand why, even though it's fairly obvious why he was beaten. Yeah, it just felt really weird and felt like there was a page missing. I actually went back to make sure I hadn't like glossed over a page accidentally, and no, it just like smash cuts to this other sequence with the Justice League, and it's very weirdly paced and just kind of thrown in there in the book, and it makes me feel like maybe that was like a last minute thing, like maybe he didn't have anything for Lex and maybe just wanted to tie that up a little bit as best he can, and just one page, you know, he's there, he's been addressed, that's it, we can move on. Priest then spends the back half of the issue untying all of the time travel stuff he's been doing over the past 10 issues, as Clark and the Justice League leave with Hope for Kansas. This actually leads to like probably my favorite Lois and Clark interaction in this whole series, and it's filled with really great interactions between the two, since Lois essentially just breaks down in front of Clark, and she, you know, she's not happy with the fact that there's this alien woman who turned up who might have his child with her, and you know, she hasn't had a child with him, and you know, she feels betrayed because the guy who said that he would love no one other else loved someone else, and Clark isn't Clark to her because he's, you know, 20 years older than he actually looks because of the time differentials and everything. So she kind of has this moment of frustration where she just screams out, and Clark understands why she is doing this and understands that he needs to come back, and he promises to come back, and it's just so well written. It feels real. It feels like an actual couples drama that you don't really see with Lois and Clark all that much, because a lot of people write them as the perfect couple who can't have problems like this, but I like that they've been given a real human problem, and it's so interesting, and I hope more writers see this and start doing that a bit more with their interpretations of Lois and Clark. So Clark ends up going off with the Justice League, and then a couple of hours later he returns with no knowledge of like what happened with him in the silver suit and him returning after 20 years. He doesn't remember any of that, and Lois picks up on that quite quickly, realizing that Clark did something timey-wimey related. He messed with the timeline somehow, and the last couple of pages are Priest revealing what happened, and we learn that thanks to the older Superman we saw in the black hole when Superman first traversed it, Superman learns that he was meant to be there, and the present day Superman stops Hope to give his Marquise device information to the salvagers that find Superman in issue 2, the ones who find him after he's initially sent across the universe by the black hole that the Justice League were trying to stop in issue 1. And because they now have the information to get Clark back to Earth earlier than they usually do, he ends up just turning back up with Lois in, he's just been gone a couple of days and not 20 years, and he doesn't have that 20 years of trauma or anything. He's just Clark. He's just a couple of days older. This now also leaves the Clark who had already gone to Victor and already gone through the black hole to find that older Superman to now become a gatekeeper of sorts to the Superman that will come eventually through different timelines, because they go through the same sort of thing he did, where they go through the black hole and turn up on Kansas and everything, and he has to be the gatekeeper of hope for them and give them all hope to continue. Not only that, we learn about the child that Hope has been given, and we learn that it's not actually Clark's, it's Jimmy, the alien boy that Clark actually befriended while he was on Kansas, and the one that Hope killed in a fit of jealousy once Jimmy realized that he can get Superman home. Hope chose this as a way to atone for her misdeeds, and not only that, the birth of the boy brings about the unification of Victor's Republic and the Arcasians, uniting the planet of Kansas and stopping their wars. This future Superman also realizes that he has to become that older Superman, knowing that his past self will be back with Lois now, and that his timeline will have closed now, which leaves him to become that gatekeeper of hope for the other Superman who will appear and start that process all over again. So I think that's kind of cool that somewhere out there in the universe that there is a Superman whose job is to be the gatekeeper of hope, the symbol of hope to Superman. I think that's so damn cool, and such an interesting take on Superman's symbol of hope, that he's not just a symbol of hope for other people, but also can be a symbol of hope for himself as well. I also really enjoyed how creative the time travel stuff was. It wasn't the usual, you can go forward and backward in time, standard time travel stuff. However, it wasn't also overly complicated or bogged down and useless techno mumble jumbo and all that sort of stuff. It was very simple. Time travel and space travel are the same sort of thing, light years and parsecs and all that sort of stuff. You could tell that Priest had fun with the idea of space travel being time travel, and like in the other issues too, you could tell he actually did some research into this, because there is, time travel theories that say that in real life, and space exploration stuff that says that in real life, and he makes it a little bit more realistic. Christopher Priest really outdid himself with this series. It was something new for Superman, which can be hard to find these days, and put a new spin on the hero's mission of hope, and hope he inspires in others, not just on Earth, but in other worlds around the universe as well. I'm going to give this issue a 10 out of 10, and the overall series of all 10 issues, 9.5 out of 10. It's a fantastic book. I thoroughly recommend you read it. It's out of continuity, it's just 10 issues long, super easy read. You could read it all in an afternoon, and I highly recommend you do.